Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutchaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Larry Indiviglia. He is a life and business coach for the Todd Durkin Mastermind. Can you introduce yourself, Larry?
Hi, Bridget. It is a pleasure to be on your show today, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to connect. And I want to add, thank you for all the great work you're doing in serving so many to make their lives better. So it's been very inspiring what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I know you're busy too, and you're taking the time
Yeah.
to talk to me. And the reason I thought you'd be a great guest is you have such a fantastic background. One, that you were in the naval, sorry.
Yeah, I was in the Navy. I was in the Navy for 26 years active,
Wow.
plus an additional 20 years. So I had 26 years total with reserve and active time. And then after 6 years, when I got out of the active duty area, I got into the health and fitness business and been a fitness professional for 33 years. And after at the 20-year mark led me to get into coaching with Todd Durkin, who started a business and life coaching program for fit pros who own gyms, performance centers, and anybody in the fitness world. So it's been a great career, very rewarding, very fulfilling. Yeah.
I like that. And you're taking, what you've learned to help others. That's so important. And the other thing is, what was interesting is you wrote two books, is my understanding.
Yeah.
The most
Yes, I
recent
did.
one is called the 126 Days, 11 Minutes. Can you tell us what that's about or what prompted you to do that?
Yeah. Thanks for asking, Bridget. In life, we have experiences, and some are deeper and more profound than others. And sometimes when you're going through it, you realize this. Or if you meet somebody, there's something just different or special, and you make a note of that. You pause, you take a breath, you make a note of it. 126 Days and 11 Minutes, our love story, is a true love story. It's a true story, not a fictional love story. I'm not a Nicholas Sparks, okay? He's great, but this one's true. And in summary, it is about two actively aging seniors, myself, Larry, age 64, and my late girlfriend, Gayle, age 68, who decide to try to discover love again online on an online dating app, which we do. And we meet each other online, and perhaps against all odds, we we are captivated by each other. And I say maybe perhaps against all odds because one of them, in this case Gayle, has been battling stage 4 breast cancer for over 4 years.
Wow.
We both decide, and I say we, okay, we make the choice to live in the today, not in the yesterday or the tomorrows. And we have a very respectful, passionate, empathetic, loving, and fun relationship over over 126 days and 11 minutes. And through that time, and I share this in the book, Bridget, there's 63 days of where Gayle was relatively healthy and the cancer was at bay. And then there's 63 days where it came back and moved to her brain, metastasized to her brain. So the book is not a downer book in a sense that it's all about transitioning and dying and passing on to the next life. There's a lot of fun and adventure, and you get a great repartee between man and woman who are dating in their late 60s. There's a lot of fun involved with it. And then there's also some sadness too when Gayle's cancer comes back. But the message is in the book, what we learn, it is better to have loved with loss rather never to have loved at all, and that it's never too late to fall in love. And that is the backstory of the book or the summary of the book. And there's a lot of love and life lessons contained in 126 days, 11 minutes. I lived the story with Gayle. She's not here to contribute her part, but it was based on texts and voicemails my own journals and a lot of detailed notes and things that I had from her and things that I kept. Yeah.
That's amazing that you were both were so open to love, especially at the age. And people, my understanding is when they get older, they feel more isolated. And I think that was good. Obviously, this happened before COVID, right?
It happened. We met on January. I remember the exact day. Our first phone call was January 6th, 2020.
Oh,
So
what?
before COVID really took effect, and January 6th, 2020, I had a phone call with Gayle. She was very honest on the phone. She said, "Larry, I have stage 4 breast cancer. I believe I will beat it. I've been battling it through mastectomy. I've been battling it through surgeries, through chemo, through radiation. I've been through the war here, but I believe I'm going to beat this." And she was very hopeful at the time. Um, and then she eventually transitioned on May 12th, which was about 18 weeks later, to be exact, 126 days, 11 minutes. But she was very, very hopeful at the time, and I was captivated by the courage that she was not going to succumb or to live in the shadow of cancer. She made the powerful choice, Bridget, to love again, to live again, even though she had this battle on her hands. And she wasn't just going to um, curl up and go away. And she hadn't had a relationship for 5.5 years, and I had been divorced for 8 years when I did meet Gayle. But she was there living the best she could, um, even with cancer. And I'm glad she did, because the choice she made was a powerful one to embrace life and love. And because of that, that elevated my life. I was captivated by her courage, by her strength, certainly by her beauty. And I will say, in relationships, maybe the ultimate is, Bridget, and many of your listeners, is to have an emotional and a mental and physical and spiritual connection
Right.
with your significant other, with your partner, with your spouse. And I had that with Gail. And even though we didn't know each other for very long at all, a year ago today, actually, she was in the inpatient hospice, which is where ultimately she transitioned. So it hasn't been a year yet since she transitioned. So yeah, that's some of the things about choice and about what you can create while you're still here on your earthly journey. And that's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing, and it's a courageous thing.
It is. And I think too, with your being so open, I mean, you guys are both open with each other. And I think that really helped with the bond. And I'm thinking maybe the back of my mind, maybe your background in life coaching helped you be more open to helping her. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I believe it did, because you work with a lot of people, um, who respond to adversity in their own courageous way. And you also have a greater empathy in working with people. Now, my particular case, I also had a cancer diagnosis, a rectal cancer diagnosis, which was stage 1. Surgery took care of it. Obviously, it was over 5 years ago, but I had that empathy. I was able to at least relate to Gail when you do get a cancer diagnosis, and that helped. I had some empathy with her in that regard. Her journey was certainly deeper and more challenging than mine ever was. But the other thing was, when you look at somebody, I remember when I met Gail, we had the phone call, and I was very captivated. And we met for dinner the next night, and she's a beautiful woman, and cancer had taken away some of the shine, outwardly, but not inwardly, and I saw that, like, her eyes were a little puffy. She had told me she was still on some chemo and things like that, but there was just a certain demeanor about Gail, about her. Uh, she was very feminine and gentle on one side and captivating, but she was steely strong inside, okay, and determined that
Right.
she was going to see this thing through and not give up. And until it got to the point where the cancer just was so far along that there was nothing else left that could be done, she never did give up. And then she concentrated on transitioning on her terms, um,
That's good.
which was important. And I think, you know, Bridget, you know, and maybe many of your listeners, you could become a number, especially somebody gets cancer and then it's like they're not sure how to talk with you. They're not sure what to say to you. They could be over empathetic, or then you never hear from them because they don't know what to say. And then you could become just a number. And I felt that Gayle refused to become just a number. And if I contributed anything, I think it was also a spiritual connection. We were meant to connect at that particular point in time and give to each other and elevate each other's life in our respective ways, which we both did for each other.
I think it's beautiful. Uh, you had mentioned she had dealt with this for 4 years. Do you know if she shared if she ever had it prior? You know what I'm saying?
No, no, she was a healthy woman all her life. She was a photographer, professional photographer. In fact, she was a dancer. She danced Argentine Tango. Actually, the cover of the book
I saw
is
that.
one of her professional photographs. So her gracing the cover of the book is pretty cool, you know. So she's a part of it. So she kept Argentine Tango dance as much as she could through her cancer treatments. There was no other cancer in her family. Okay. And you know, she had lived a worldly life. She had lived in Indonesia. She had lived back east. She was a California girl at heart, but there was no history of it. And you know, it was a routine cancer check back in 2015 that discovered the mass in her left breast, and it was so far advanced the type of breast cancer she had. So there was nothing she was, quote, exposed to that she recalled any event that really, hey, that's what caused the cancer.
Right.
Um, so yeah.
That's did she have children? I was just curious.
No, she did not. Gayle was married. She was married 3 times. Very young at first. She had a couple of marriages, and her third marriage was, I think, almost for 20 years. And so she was Gayle. Let's see, Gayle was, when I met Gayle, had not been married for 20 years. Okay, so she had had a couple other relationships, but she didn't have any children. I believe she had a couple of miscarriages. Okay, but it just was not in her journey meant to be for her to have children, and she didn't. So she didn't have any children. Um, Her mother was still alive, who was elderly, and she had a brother, but no other family.
Wow.
Certainly a lot of friends, and especially a lot in the tango community. She just
Right.
loved Argentine tango. Yeah,
At minimum, she had some good support from friends, like you said, her
she
community.
did. She did. You know, it's interesting, Bridget. When I had to take her to the emergency room on day, and I talk about this in the book, on day 64, when she really was ill, and we had to go back to the hospital. And this was when COVID. This was March 22nd, so COVID had hit. And then after we found out that she had 4 tumors in the brain, and they maybe could operate on one of them, and the other 3 they just couldn't do anything about.
Right.
And Gayle had fought the fight, and she said, "I don't have any fight left, Larry. I don't want to be an experiment. Cut my head open, you know." She goes, "I'm finished." And she said to me, she said, it was a um, very seminal moment. She said, "You know, I was a lover, a dancer. I took pictures," meaning she was a photographer,
Mhm.
"and I fiercely nourished and protected my friendships in life." And that's how she summed up her life at the time. And she meant all of that. And I think it, in a simple way, she summed up kind of who she was and what was important to her. So friendships was definitely one of them. Yeah.
Well, that's one thing when we spoke earlier that when you're dealing with something like this, it definitely helps you focus on what's important. right? And where to put your time that you have left and to enjoy it.
Yeah,
um,
you do. And I think that each day becomes, and I talk about this in the book. Gail was relatively healthy. She was also going towards alternative methodologies and approaches
right.
to curing, including mistletoe, including CBD oil, other things she pursued. Always body work. She always worked out. She had Reiki work. She had a medical intuitive. She pursued a lot of different things and focused just on her healing as much as she can. So, my relationship with her, I worked around that as much as I could. And I'm working, Gail was working to stay alive. Okay. I was working. And so we did the best we could. And it's shared in the book what we did and the fun we had, and we we had a lot of fun, and it was one of those things where I share a lot of text messages in the book and how we spoke with each other. And I think if you're a man and a woman, at least a heterosexual relationship, there's a lot of good lessons about how to talk to each other, how to treat each other, how to remind each other, how to say, I love you, and how to address each other on a daily basis, being present and with intention that makes you feel good, that nourishes the relationships rather than takes away from it. And I felt that that was something I learned. And Gail really helped me, somebody who had been married 25 years, had a couple of relationships, but wasn't real sure, hey, could I find real love again? And even though I had a profound and a short relationship with her, it gave me the confidence to be able to move forward and that was possible. And she did that for me. And I was there for her on her last stage of her life. She didn't die alone. She didn't die in pain. I can guarantee you that. Not physical pain. Mental and emotional is a different story. But she didn't die in physical pain. And and we were there for each other to the end, which is something that you learn from. There's a great deal of learning going through that process.
Yeah, I think we just learn constantly, right? From when you got to pivot.
We do.
Yes.
We do. You know, Bridget, people ask me the reason I wrote the book, like, why did you write this book? And it's like, did you set out writing this book? Two reasons I did. The first reasons being a tremendous amount of love and life lessons from Gail. The power of choice in choosing to love and to live, even with cancer, that duality. You could still be fighting something and having a challenge, but at the same time still pursuing joy. And she always went back to her tango dancing to keep her alive, to keep her going, and her ballet dancing, and that's something she always did. But so the lessons that I learned from her, and to share that, and then also in the book I share on day 51. The book is actually organized by days, and it
Okay.
reads very fast. So it's day 1 through day 126, and then there's 11 minutes, which if you read the book, you'll get that. But day 51, she talked about wanting to write a fourth book. Gail was a professional photographer. She had 3 photography books that she published, all images of her photography. But the fourth book was going to be my enlightened journey, living, loving, dancing through stage 4 breast cancer. That was going to be her fourth book. Now, she never got the ability to write that book, but I remember that day she told me that. And I said to myself, well, this is not Gail's autobiography. It is not. Okay. It is our love story and our relationship with each other. But in the process, you'll get to know Gail. And maybe in getting to know Gail a little bit, Bridget, maybe some of that she might have shared if she wrote her fourth book. So.
Right. I like what you're saying, what she did. She sounded like a very creative person. She sounds like someone I'd want to be a friend with because,
Yeah, I think you would. Many people.
because I like me being creative helps you deal with issues you're coming across. You know what I'm saying? You have different.
Yeah, it does. Gail also did not have, she believed in a higher power. She didn't have a traditional belief or sense in God as many people know it.
Right,
No judgment. She
right.
was mystical. Okay. She believed in astrology and some of the energy about astrology. She didn't necessarily govern her life by it, but she was a mystical person, believed in life in the womb, believed life here on earth, and believed a transition to a higher level of consciousness at some point. And when she went into the inpatient hospice home, it was a 4-bed inpatient hospice home where she transitioned. She was there for 44 days.
Wow.
She worked on finding peace, which was difficult because she didn't want to die. She didn't want to transition, but she felt at some point she would accept it, and that took a while for her, I think, to find that peace. But over time, I believe she did before she transitioned. But that was the third stage, that you will transition to the next level and the next life. So she did believe in that very, very strongly.
That helped her die in peace, right? Or the right
Yeah,
word.
in the book, I talk about that in that I asked her, and I did visit her when COVID hit, Bridget. The visiting was restricted, even at a 4-bed hospice home. I was able to go as her primary advocate, healthcare advocate, and her elderly mother was able to come in, and her brother, um, to visit her, but there was no other friends. Like it was restricted because of COVID. I mean, this was the end of March through April, through the middle of May before Gail transitioned. So we were right in the middle of COVID. But in a way, it forced me, and I'll use that word. When I went into her room, I had to stay in her room other than going to the restroom. Some of these hospice homes have common areas. You could talk to other families. There was none of that during COVID. So it I'll use the word forced, but it encouraged is a better word to me to be entirely present with Gail when I was in her room. And she, after the cancer in her brain, she couldn't talk to her friends anymore on the phone. Then, of course, eventually she couldn't talk and eventually couldn't see even. So there wasn't that, she was losing connection. So
Right.
I was her connection to the world, and of course the wonderful staff there. But it forced me to be present, to journal in more detail, and to find ways to bring in real life to Gail. And I talk about it in the book. And in some ways, the journaling and the detail I was able to have, I tried to help Gail find peace, but she told me, Larry, I have to do that on my own. You can't give me peace. And one of my friends reached out very powerfully, and I talk about it on day 114 of the book. Said, Larry, you have to find your own peace. Bring that into Gail's room, and that will help her find peace. You can't, it's not like a card you hand her. Here's the peace card, Gail. And then also during the time, Bridget, the spiritual counselors couldn't come to the rooms as they normally would could because of COVID.
Right.
So that was that challenge there, but that was the way it was supposed to be. But yeah, that was very real.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you how that went about because of COVID restrictions. And I still think you are barely really had a great impact on her. I mean, and something like she believed in the connection. I'm not sure how you're saying it, but you guys needed to be together. She needed you, and you needed her. um,
Yeah, I did, and I shared music with her. She was into music. I shared stories. I did massage therapy because I've had some background in that. I did what I could for her to make each time I was there present in a different way. And then, some days let me not, this is all true as the book is.
right.
And some days I didn't do anything. I just listened. You know what I mean? You're just quiet.
Hmm.
And they were challenging days also, which I talk about in the book. Um, and and there's also something very important. The people that are in these hospice homes, and I know hospice comes to the house, This was an inpatient hospice home, and there's reasons for that that are shared in the book. And we were able to get Gayle in there. The staff was just amazing. They had a musical therapist that was still able to sing to the clients. And when we were there, the other three rooms, I saw a lot of people transition. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know their family members, but rooms would change. Like people were in, people were out. And over the time Gayle was there, Gayle was the youngest, I think, patient over the time she was there. And you start paying attention to things, but the staff and the hospice staff were just awesome people. The nurses, the assistant nurses, the homemakers, these people are just, and I talk about it in the book, are just incredible angelic souls. They just really are. And the work they do every day in helping people find peace and pain free to their last stage of life or during the last stage of life. Yeah.
And I'm glad you're mentioning that because that's not something we talk about much, right? That's something that we take for granted for what those kind of people are doing to help the end of stage life.
Yeah. And, there's one story I share in the book, Bridget, and it doesn't run, it just very quickly. One of her homemakers, her name's Lydia in the book. I didn't use actual names in certain cases, but in any case, Lydia was taking care of Gayle for many days, and she came in at the end of one day and she said, Larry, I'd like to say goodbye to Gayle. And I said, Lydia, and she said, Larry, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks. And those hospice workers know when people start getting to the last stage, Bridget.
Right.
And she went to Gayle, and Gayle couldn't see or talk. And she held her hand. And she said, thank you for letting me take care of you.
Oh, wow.
And you sit down there, and I had to put that in the book. That is pure humanness right there.
Yes.
And she had a tear in her eye, as I did, in relaying that. And I knew Gayle was aware. I know she could hear her, at least tell that. And these are the type of the people that work in those places. They have a really true calling. And she meant every word of that, and that was it. Lydia left, and Gayle passed 7 days later. So,
Wow.
it's interesting.
I knew it,
The
right?
signals. Yeah, the signals.
Intuition that when she came back from vacation, Gail would not be there anymore physically anyway.
Yeah. So they know, and a lot of times, but she said it, okay? And a lot of times people may not say that, but she just felt, called to do that, and she loved Gayle, and as many people did. So you learn things about the dying process or the transitioning process, okay? And I discussed it in the book, how it came about. When you're somebody's advocate, some of the things you have to do when you become a person's health advocate to get them to a place where they need to go. I mentioned that in the book and the journey we had to go through from Gayle's last hospital stay until she transitioned to a hospice home, and some of the things and dynamics about that. That's where Gayle held on to her truth. She knew herself. She knew that she did not want to die in pain after having been through radiation and multiple surgeries and endless chemo. She didn't want that at the end, and she didn't have to experience that at the end. But you have to be your own advocate. And Bridget, you have to ask questions. You
Yes.
really do. You have to ask questions.
I believe in I talk about health advocacy and how you have to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I joke that I'm a PETA, which means pain in the ass. I'm just kidding. But I try asking them, you have to work with doctors who are open, or staff that are open to asking questions, because there's so many options out there now to help.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also what Gayle was dealing with, she understood, is about the quality of life too. And that, you know what I'm saying?
She did. She kept up on, she felt she was still alive past the 4-year mark because of her nutrition, her movement, the different things that she followed and was disciplined to continue to follow. That helped her immune system at least hold some of the cancer at bay.
Right.
Some of the chemo worked, obviously some of the radiation worked for a period of time, but at some point, stage 4 is far along, so the stage 4 stories, there's reality there, but she did feel that all that made a difference, and she believed it. And I think it kept, to keep hope alive is a very, very strong, very strong thing. It's interesting, on the back of the book, I connected, there's a small glass mosaic graphic picture of an artist by Deb Barks. Deb was a head and neck cancer survivor, and Deb made a glass mosaic called The Journey. And in that, she talks about, and she did this to honor people in treatment who have survived treatment, or those like Gayle who didn't. And she talks about fear and pain in that graphic mosaic. It's represented, and the words are there, but how hope and faith ultimately give you strength to find peace. Peace at the very end, if it's transitioning, or peace to get through the treatments. You find that, and that's at the back of the book. And I talked to Deb about that, got permission to use that. And it was part of Gayle's story, and that cancer was part of her story. Tango was part of her story. And then the relationships. Bridget, there's one thing for your listeners, was unconditional love. And Gayle told me, she said, Larry, you can't love somebody unconditionally until you unconditionally love yourself. Then you could extend that to another, where there's no expectations, no conditions, right? And no judgments. And I had that with Gayle, and that's what I learned. And I also learned society, sometimes you meet somebody, it's like, hey, Larry, what's in this for you? And I'm no hero. Like, the woman has stage 4 cancer, just walk away. And maybe Gayle had some interactions online where, she met somebody, and that was the decision he made. They didn't want to go any further. And I get that. But I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't, because I learned so much, experienced so much about courage and about love. And it's because she made that powerful choice. So I say at the end of the book, for all the and there's a lot of Gayles and Larrys out there, Bridget, that are afraid maybe to love. But you know what? And it doesn't have to be life-threatening. It doesn't have to be a cancer diagnosis. It could be something else. Take a chance, because sometimes not risking is riskier than not.
I like that. It's
going through and doing it. And if I hadn't, I would be a lesser person today. And I'm sorry Gayle had to transition. It was a loss. There's still a certain level of grief, but she did tell me to love again. She said, Larry, we haven't known each other, I shared in the book, too long. I don't want you moping around. She goes, you're going to be 65 this summer. You're not a young man, so don't wait too long until you find another relationship. And she meant that. And, but let me make no mistake about it. When you get through that last stage, most people, especially Gayle was 68, they don't want to die. Your mortality hits you, but at some point, many do find peace, and either through others, or through their own faith, or through just their own courage that, hey, their life made a difference, and they're leaving on somewhat their own terms, okay, with some dignity and without being in pain. And that's a big thing. That's important, Bridget.
I think what you're sharing is so beautiful. It's a great example. You're inspiring other people. You're also a great example, even though you believe Gayle had some resilience, but you do too, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's a lot in life in general, right?
Yeah.
It's tough, but it's in how you deal with it. It's your mindset. And I like how you brought up unconditional love of yourself first, right? In not judging, how you can be more open to helping others. And you're definitely a great example of resilience. I really truly think so. Inspiration and great example of how ideas and how we can help other people when they are suffering. Is that the right word?
Yeah, Bridget, there is. And it's their courage that inspires us to be or anyone to be courageous as well. Okay. And like I said, I believe I happen to be a Christian. I believe that there's a plan for my life. And, I believe God connected Gayle and I for a very powerful reason.
Right.
And that's the way it was supposed to be. When I look at it today, it was such a short period of time I did know her, because it's almost a year now. When I look back on it, it was such a short period of time we had. But like I said, quality of the time over the quantity.
Yeah.
And that's all we have at the end of the day is time, and to make each day a quality day. And I think that's the important thing, because that's what we have. We have today. We don't know what the tomorrows are going to bring.
It's such beautiful truth that, what you're saying. It is so important. The quality of time that we have, make the most of it and focus on what's important. It's what I like to always tell people. Can you, the book is called 126 Days, 11 Minutes. It's on Amazon, right?
Yes. Yeah. Right now, 126 Days, 11 Minutes. Our love story is on Amazon.com. So you can get a Kindle or a paperback version. And the audio version is supposed to come out, and I mean this, any day now.
Okay.
It has all been approved by the Audible division of Amazon. We are waiting any day for it to be available on Audible. So for your valuable listening audience who absorb books audio better, please look for it, because I'll make an announcement when it's officially out. And some of the audio books formats have been delayed because of COVID. COVID affected a lot of things, but in any case, that's the way to get the book. And if anybody wants to contact me directly, you can find me on LinkedIn, Larry Indiviglia. I'm on LinkedIn there. And then also on Facebook, Larry Indiviglia, at Larry Indiviglia. And then if you want to email me directly, it's LINDIVIGLIA, Indiviglia @gmail.com. And I will answer every email like I normally do. So that's it. And it's been great to connect with so many people on podcast. And Bridget, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on today. I really enjoyed it.
It's awesome. I really appreciate your honesty in sharing this story. It's just, it does provide, gives me hope for myself still, even though I've had health issues in the past. It's just another example of courage and hope that we need to have sometimes.
Yeah. It's we're all in this together one way or the other. So it's being able to appreciate the journey.
And you can't do it alone. That's what I've learned too.
Exactly right.
Thank you so much, everybody, for those listening. I will have the links in the description of this podcast episode. Have a great day.